last panel of fireside chat of the day. Deepak, if you can please join me, that would be awesome. And we are going to talk about how do you build a budget, or how do you sort of create a business case for customer success AI investment. Deepak has done that, but let me tee up the panel based on a conversation I had this afternoon. So I was talking to like an investor friend, and I was asking him, hey, you go to board meetings, portfolio level, what's happening? Like, what's happening in the market? So he said, look man, it's almost October, Q4 is coming. Half of our companies are going to miss plan. Half. And this is again, think about planning was done back in 2023 with conservative assumptions, because everybody missed their plan pretty much 2022. He said about 30% are going to just barely make it, and maybe 20% are like lean, which are going to hit it out of the park, but that's not the narrative. So I think it's just interesting for us to all keep in mind that there is still, as a buyer of software, so people who are in, let's say, a CFO role, they buy software, chief customer officers buy software, but the environment we are in, there is still a lot of scrutiny over spend and software spend. So I thought that is a way to tee up like Deepak, like how do you think about building a business case for bringing in new software?
I thought we are getting the software free. And that's what this meeting is about. So build the relationship to get the free software.
Possible. It lasts for like a month and then so Deepak, why don't you just introduce yourself, tell us about your journey to Observe.
Yeah, my name is Deepak Kumar. I'm the Chief Customer Officer at Observe. We are a conversational intelligence platform for contact centers. Work with customers who've got, typically B2C customers who've got contact centers greater than 200 or 250 agents. 400 agents is our sweet spot, anything greater than that. We would say mostly in the enterprise and the large enterprise. We are not an SMB play. We've got about roughly 250-ish customers, 300-ish, but that's our market. And for us, and I've been in the, sort of customer success space for more than longer than what I would like to remember. But across networking companies, I was at Arialta, and then prior to that at 24/7 and Factory. And where are we in the journey? For us, a key metric that matters. I know earlier in the day we talked about NRR, GRR, etc. Our vantage point, obviously those are outcome metrics. Everybody in this room probably is measured by some form. We try to think about the problem a little differently in the sense that we measure how much value are we creating for the customer, right? And are we generating, minimum 3x value, ROI on the investment that they're making on us, right? And that tells us whether we are adding, we're going to survive, come cost cutting or come, a difficult budget conversation. So for us, the most important metric is that, is my software or my product generating minimum 3x value for my customer.
Thank you for that. So now let's bring it back to, you're doing a 3x value, a lot through process, also a lot through tuning, standardization, scaling. So how have you thought about getting the right solution for your team?
Yeah, so our journey is similar to most of the folks in this room, right? So they will have an implementation cycle, we are 6 to 8 weeks on implementation cycle. Generally that work goes off pretty easily. And then comes the hard part of customer adoption and the value. Interestingly in our product, customer adoption and any of the adoption metrics that we are trying to look for don't quite correlate highly to the the value that they can extract out of the platform. I guess similar to some of the, I think, Planet you mentioned, right? We are essentially like a data as a service. We are data with a certain set of workflows. The workflows that they are using for us, we know what value we are generating, but that may not be good enough to generate 5x or 7x of the value. So we have to think deeply about the customer business, and we are seeing whether that metric is moving or not for that customer, right? Because there's an action that they have to take on the other side. That's why our CS journey is a lot more involved, which also means that the knowledge about or the understanding of the customer health is embedded more in the conversations that my CS team is having with the customers versus just looking at product metrics. Vache, who's our chief product officer, we look at our product metrics pretty deeply and quite regularly, but that doesn't give us good insight into whether the customer health is actually good or poor or great. And that's been the challenge for the past. I think Shisha is in the room. He's the OG of customer success, right? One of the first people who said you need to think about a platform for this. He would say very early on that you have to have a good view of health score for you to figure out everything about that your customer base. It's hard to do that, at least for us, and that's where we felt there's a play for what Munish and Naveen talked about.
So tell us more about how did your Statisfy journey begin?
Look, I think for us the journey began with in the past we've had customer success platforms. So about 2 years back, when I came on board, I actually terminated all the contracts. We had 2 customer success platforms, and I terminated the contracts. And we moved the basic reporting and some amount of workflow into Salesforce. Partly because I didn't feel that we were getting the true value out of the customer success platform, because it was garbage in, garbage out. I would go look at the health score predicted by the platform, and either it is off. You say, hey, customer is great, product usage is great, customer sentiment is happy, as entered by the CS, and that will be at the user level on the other side. And 3 months later, we get a churn notice, and I'm like, wait a minute, what actually happened here, right? And so we went back and felt that let's just go from just shut it down, move some of that to Salesforce, and look at the problem from first principles. And our problem statement was, can we understand customer health that is embedded mostly in the conversations or significantly in the conversations that the CS teams or the account management teams are having with the customer, or even for that matter execs across up and down the chain, and can we extract intelligence out of that? And so we started on the journey of obviously first recording all the calls, right? We found some intelligence, and it was hard to sort of collate that because you have 4 calls or 6 calls. How do you connect? How do you string it all together? And that's where when Munish came in and Naveen came in, pitched this idea that, hey, we think we can try and solve this problem for you. I said, guys, it's not a trivial problem. We operate that in the contact center world. So we understand how hard that problem is from a pure AI standpoint. And we said, if you guys can go take a crack at that, it's worthwhile. It is valuable for us. And so that's how we started the journey. And my first comment to them is, guys, you have to integrate 5 systems. We've got Zoom, Salesforce, we use Rocket for project management. We got to connect all of them. And they said, yeah, we figure that out. And sure enough, about 2 weeks later, they figured out the tech integration part, which in itself is somebody was saying in the room that, oh, tech integration is hard. Yes, it is hard, but these are at least for the systems that they were integrating with, solve the problem very easily for us. My CS ops person said, oh, actually the integration, we thought it will take 6 weeks, but it was done in 2 weeks. So that was like, okay, now these guys are on to something. Let's see if they can pull out some intelligence out of the interactions. So,
Thank you for that. So I think you said something interesting, which is, look guys, it's not an interesting problem, or it's a difficult problem. So trust me, because an easy problem to solve, you would start a company behind it, because then we do profit here. So, so maybe talk a little bit about like how you use Statisfy, what you're hearing from your team. What is the early signs of impact?
yeah, I talk about it from my team perspective first. Is for them, note taking, summarization, action items, and dissemination of that, including sort of what we call the end of the week aggregation. That's a big productivity boost, right? The previous tools that we had, that was actually the challenge. To get people to use it was hard, right? And I think the other area where one of my team members was saying, we were doing the back testing. These guys had pointed out on a set of cohort of customers where there was churn risk identified, and we knew those churn risks because we were engaging with those customers at a senior level, so we kind of knew that, right? And so I asked these guys to go back and say, tell me where exactly you saw the first signs of that churn risk emanating in that customer. And they were pretty close, and my team really likes that. In other words, right after the call, they get a sense of what are hot button topics that they have to focus on, which is usually in their day in life, you go from one call to another or one meeting to another, and they really don't keep track of that, and they don't realize, oh, this particular thing that the customer is saying has the potential to blow up. So, focus on that. And I think that's what my team likes. For me, the simple view that if I want, recently getting into an exec call with a customer, earlier I would go Slack somebody and say, hey, give me the context of this customer. And instead of that, now I just go into Statisfy and take a look at what were the last 3-4 meetings, and I have a sense of where that is. Now I still Slack, just to keep my CS team honest, right? And say, hey, give me something that I should care what they care about. But at my level, it certainly helps me to get a sort of a exec view of where the health is. We still have some ways to go. We are early in the cycle, but I'm more bullish about that, and my team being able to focus on the things that matter versus the 7 things. Certainly, my product partner will appreciate that, because usually what used to happen is they put out all the list of action items and they give out 7 feature requests that will go to product board, and then that will go to Vache and saying prioritize these. Which of these actually matter, right? And that's an important context that product teams need. And sometimes the actual conversation gives them the context. So those are things that are still, we haven't yet realized value out of it, but it's certainly starting to help surface those problems.
And I think there are some things I feel very passionate about. This is one of them, product CS connection. Because think of it from a customer standpoint. The customer says, I want this feature. They tell the customer success manager in front of them. They log it. The thing is, product people, but the product people say, okay, next quarterly cycle, let me pick it up. List of 7 issues.
If that happens, that would be great, right?
Okay. Maybe that happens, like, next quarterly cycle. So then what happens? The product says, oh, I don't understand what this means. This is a solution. It is not a problem. So what do? 3 months after the customer requested a feature, complained about something, because product said, I'm not going to build this because it's a solution. And
don't understand the problem. So customer is like, oh, finally you woke up, you heard what I wanted. But by the way, why do I have to repeat everything what I just told you and which I've been telling you? Listening to me, like the reason why I get so passionate is that there's such a big gap with people transitions, account transitions that customers just get ignored, and as companies, we just try to solve amongst ourselves. But the customer is the one who gets ignored. So that definitely rings
No,
a bell.
I think, I'd say this, right? As we go through the rollout, certainly I would think, my partner in crime, which is the product, because that's really, they are all product companies, so we are not sort of services companies that we go build whatever the customer. We're trying to make sure that whatever is being built in the product goes across, and that's a hard job for the product leaders to prioritize, right? And to focus on. So we have to do a much better job on the customer success side to filter and provide the appropriate context for those teams so that they can actually work on the things that matter for the business versus random requests customers do put out random requests. We all have been in those shoes where they say, I want this button to be exactly like this because some platform that I was using in the past actually has. How does it matter? But I think that's really what we are trying to accomplish through this.
We're almost getting to time, so one last question, which is, high growth companies like Observe, there's huge focus on profitability. So how easy or difficult was it to make a business case for a tool like Statisfy when you talk to your CFO?
Look, CFOs are, they have a task and they are trying to get to profitability as all of us, all venture-backed companies have to get to, right, at some point. So for us, it is simply a question of, hey, can I automate 30-40% of the tasks that my CS team is doing and free up space? We are baking in a certain amount of higher coverage for next year in terms of CS coverage. So that there is value there. And the way I had a discussion with my CFO is simply, look, we believe that it will help us identify, one or two churns. And most of us in our SaaS business, we typically look at what? Anywhere from 2x of your first year ARR as your cost of acquisition of that customer. So you should be able to pay it off very well even if you catch one extra churn early enough that you can act on it, and it doesn't mean that Statisfy can solve the problem, but obviously the solving of the problem is at the company level. But if you are able to catch some of these things early, that is a big ROI. And my CFO says, okay, interesting, let's go for it, right? And that's how at least the business case is being built. Now the proof is in the pudding. We got to go deliver and then make sure that we don't have more customer issues because of changing coverage ratios, and that we actually find issues that were potentially lurking underneath and that didn't come to either the product or my attention early.
Awesome. Actually, then actually one last question, which is Observe is a very interesting company. It's an AI company. AI is in their DNA. So there are still a lot of leaders who are sitting on the sideline saying, let's let AI play out a little more. My hands are so full right now. Because what I said earlier, half the companies are missing plan. What that means is that a lot of times if I'm a CS leader, like how do I plug the leaky bucket? How do I get ahead of churn, etc. So therefore, my appetite to invest in new tools, new processes actually is low. So what advice would you have on the start to embrace AI? It's an investment, it's going to help you.
Munish, we've had this conversation before as well, right? There is a bloat of spend on a CS resource. That's just the nature. You go add on Salesforce, you have a whole bunch of additional software that that the CS person, you're paying for CS person, much like what's actually happening on the sales side. So that's the reality that the CFO will see. He look at it and say, for every CS person, I'm spending X dollars, which is whatever that dollar is, right? And so that's just the reality of it, right? So making a case for new investment has to be backed with a clear understanding of where you think your ROI is. Go test it out. Don't sit on the sideline, because just sitting on the sideline is not going to solve the problem. You have to go lean in, fall, make some mistakes, and then learn from that versus sitting on the sideline. But be very clear about the ROI that you are trying to drive. If you try to have that clarity, then you have better thought at even making the case internally for AI investment with your CFO, but even for yourself, right? You have to make that thing, oh, I'm not going to do this, and I'm going to focus on trying this new tool. That also is an investment from your team's effort. So I would say that's how you should think about it. And there's no magic answer there, at least from my vantage point.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Deepak, again, for both your early support